speaker that we have on the platform for you is Councillor Rania Khan, lead member on Tower Hamlets Council for Localisation and Regeneration. We're very pleased to have a member of the Labour group on Tower Hamlets Council here today. Councillor Khan is a senior member of the Cabinet on Tower Hamlets Council. With the widespread support of Palestine in the borough, we believe the Tower Hamlets Labour group, the majority on the local council, has a vital role to play in developing solidarity in the borough. So please welcome Councillor Khan.
Good afternoon everyone, friends, and assalamu alaikum to many of you. I'm also a local teacher as well. I teach in Newham, and I have to say that NUT are doing some fantastic work for the campaign for Palestine. And as a local teacher, I remember when the incursion on Gaza happened, I tend not to bring the issues of Palestine into my classroom because I'm a science teacher. We do experiments and we blow up things and exciting stuff. But the kids wanted to talk about it because they felt, even non-Muslim kids, wanted to talk about it. They were so disgusted and outraged by the fact that they could see schools being bombed. And they were saying to me, "Miss, how can they attack a school where children like us go there?" And it was really heartbreaking. And they wanted to talk about it. They wanted to discuss the issue. And I'm sure, and they did have the chance to do that in many occasions. And a few years ago, I was involved in the launch of the Friends of Al-Aqsa London branch. A few years ago in Tower Hamlets, we had a fantastic meeting in the LMC. We had lots of supporters, and since then we have seen the Friends of Al-Aqsa London branch doing some really great work. So thank you for inviting me to speak today. It's heartening to see so many different people from a diverse background here today. People who belong to different political parties and communities, all coming together to protest the injustices of the continuing blockade of Gaza by the Israeli force. Like many of you here today, I watched with horror in December and January as the Israeli Defense Force kind of ransacked homes and killed hundreds of innocent civilians. But even if the news headlines have now subsided, but the brutality still remains. But even in only now the sounds of rockets and bombs have been replaced by the silence of slow death. The people of Gaza are still brutalized by the intensive bombardment and the use of illegal phosphorus weapon, white phosphorus, which is illegal according to international law. We're left without homes, without jobs, without basic medical care, and even in some cases without clean water. But in the months since the bombardment has stopped, the Israeli blockade has meant they cannot rebuild their lives. The siege of Gaza is nothing less than the collective punishment of civilian population. And it is accompanied by the so-called diplomatic efforts that make a mockery of international law and the norm of justice. The fact that Israel will not hold illegal settlement building, even as they attack, even if Hamas is unwilling to come on the table, is a crime. The fact that in the West Bank and Gaza, Palestinians must wait for hours at the checkpoints to access basic services like schools and medical clinics is a crime. The fact that Israel's Likud party is so desperate for power that it has made common cause with a man like Avigdor Lieberman is also a crime. Whose views, let me just give you some of his views on Arab-Israel citizenship and the rights of Palestinians in occupied territories are more right-wing than even the BNP would say in public, is also a big crime. But we all know this, and this is exactly why we're here. So the question is, what can be done? Well, perhaps you found it frustrating that nothing was done and Israel was allowed to continue to use disproportionate force against the innocent Palestinians. And perhaps you have come to a conclusion that there's no point of these kind of demonstrations and so forth, that perhaps nothing can be done to change the government stance or the stance of the USA. But sometimes small steps are also very useful. I mean, in Tower Hamlets, we passed a motion when this happened to condemn Israel's attacks, to support, to create friendship links with Palestine, and to support Palestinian goods, especially the Palestinian oil. And we've seen that cross co-op in Tower Hamlets and in the Mela, and we've had many stores, etc. So it's a very small step, but this kind of pressure needs to continue. There has been, but the truth is that if any change is to come, it is to come from Israel. and it will come through Israelis themselves, it will come through Palestinians themselves as well, and also through international community, especially the Jewish community and the Palestinian community as well. There has always been Jews who have opposed Israel, either in principle or what has happened to the Palestinian people, but they were once a tiny minority, but the brutality we saw last winter, the brutality that continues in the form of a blockade, was a shock to many Jews as well as many others. And perhaps for the first time, we can see the strengthening movement in the Jewish community that recognizes that Israel's actions are wrong by any measure. This itself is, I think, a spark of hope as well. But for all of us here, we have gathered to support Palestine and the Palestinian cause, and we must be careful that our outrage does not spill over, and that we choose our words carefully and our attitudes carefully as well, so that we do not alienate our potential friends and potential friends of the Palestinians. The boycott and the sanctions campaign is really important, and it's a really incredibly powerful tool. And the boycott campaign is a powerful tool, and for ordinary people, and it's a really good tool to kind of pressure Israel as well. But that shouldn't be allowed to spill over boycotting businesses that are not linked with the Israeli Defense Force. And protests like this one is the most effective, I think, personally, when they're targeted as well, when they come forward with the specific aims and methods, and when they can appeal to a broad group as possible, like this one here today. Being here today shows our commitment to the international justice and the belief that the rule of law applies to everyone, no matter how powerful they are and how powerful allies that they might have. And it shows our support for the people of Gaza today, and it lets them know that the world has not forgotten them, and that we will be here lobbying our government, fighting for hearts and minds, shouting in the streets until a just solution to occupation is found. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Thank you.